My ex-husband shot me while I was pregnant. Yep, that's right. He shot me while I was pregnant. So let's talk about it. Get ready with me while I tell you the story of my ex-husband and the father of two of my children shooting me, and that leading me to go to medical school. So, many moons ago, we were very pregnant and in the garage with his mom and his two aunts, looking for baby stuff, preparing for our soon new arrival. And just out of nowhere, he picked up a pew-pew, pointed at my face, and I turned my head by the grace of God and was shot in my jawline, and it lodged the bullet in my jawbone. Well, for about 2.5 years, I thought he had shot me with a BB gun. But it turned out that it was a .22. How do I know this, you ask? Well, Dr. McElwain, an oral and facial surgeon in the great state of Alabama, did a pro bono surgery for me to remove the bullet because obviously while I was pregnant, we couldn't take it out of my face. That would involve surgery and being put to sleep and so on and so forth. So my ex-mother-in-law, not the one that I'm currently referring to, not the one that, pew-pewed me and all, but a different mother-in-law called to see if he would be interested in doing a pro bono case, and thankfully he was. So that doctor is what led me to want to go into medicine, which now my whole opinion of the medical field and medicine has changed, and I'm not really interested in it. But back to the story. So we go to the hospital, and of course the sheriff's deputies meet us there because, hello, I was shot. Why wouldn't they come? So they asked me, what happened? And at this time, I was just so mesmerized and in love with him and just thought, no way in hell that he meant to do that. He was just young and stupid and, didn't know gun safety, whatever. But no, as it turns out, while I was dating him and shortly after marrying him, I found out literally everything the man said was a complete and utter lie. Down to how old he was, what house he lived in, and the fact that his mother was a triplet. None of that was true. So the house that I thought he lived in was actually his grandmother's house. His mom was not a triplet. She wasn't even a twin. He did have two aunts that were twins, but she was not. She was actually the baby of the family. Literally everything this man ever told me was a lie. Well, I went and lived in a place called Safe Place, which is like a battered women's shelter, because whenever I finally broke down and told him that I wanted a divorce, he broke my nose and knocked me out and ran off with she couldn't have been more than a couple months old, maybe two-month old, maybe 3. Anyway, he ran off with her. So I had to lie and convince him that, I wanted to get back together and that I wasn't going to leave him. And if he would just please, let me see our daughter and we could hang out. And to make a long story short, I lived this lie for a little bit until I finally gained up his trust enough to go visit my family with our daughter in tow. And from there, I was transported to, I went to the police department, and then they took me to Safe Place, the women's shelter, where I lived for a few months. But anyway, that was a real fun part of my life. And I had literally nothing going for me, no career, no college, nothing. But I am telling you this story because if you are down and out and you're in an abusive relationship and you're scared to leave, yes, it is very scary. And especially after you leave them, it's an even more scary time. But let me tell you what my dumbass did, because I am such a glutton for punishment that even though we divorced and I got away from him, and he actually, the judge, when all this stuff went to trial, his judge and his attorney and my attorney, we all met in the chambers without him. And they offered me to basically allow him to go into the military and make something of himself and possibly get child support. So I took that option, and the only thing it seemed like the Army did for him, besides career, having a career, because he's still in the Army to this day, was teach him how to better hide his crazy. Because let me tell you, he came back from, he lived in Korea, and then he came back and he was going to be stationed in California. And my dumb tail, he wanted to see our daughter, and I thought he had been kind of rehabilitated and stuff. My dumb tail allowed him to come back into my life, only to be just totally almost annihilated, because he was so cunning and conniving and made me think that he had changed and he really wanted our family. And mind you, this was my high school sweetheart and, the father of my child, because at that time we only had one. Well, he didn't change. He just hid it better. He hid his crazy better. And he learned how to act in front of other people. He learned how to speak better. He learned how to control his crazy just enough. So I moved from Alabama to California, and let me tell you, things did not get any better. He was just as crazy. He hid his crazy from me long enough, because when we didn't have housing, while we were waiting for housing, we lived with his friends who didn't have any children, but also that had an extra bedroom. So we all just kind of lived in there. And he was so good. He was on his best behavior. But soon after we got our own house, my sister came to live with us in California. And we had, I wouldn't really call it a party, but we had a bunch of people over, some single and some couples, at our house, just, eating, drinking, being merry. And I guess he thought I was flirting with somebody or something. And that resulted in him picking me up by my neck and making lots of threats. And so I left him again, because he obviously had not changed. Of course, there was a lot of other stuff that happened in the interim. But I flew back to Alabama, only to find out that I was pregnant. Yay! Which I love my son. I wouldn't take him back for anything in the world. But my mom made me go back, hopefully that he would change, because, again, still didn't have a career, still didn't really have much college-wise going on, and I, kind of was hopeless and didn't have any options. Well, thank God, I ended up getting a divorce from him again. It was a very crazy time. He kidnapped our kids, ran back off to Texas with them, because we ended up PCSing to El Paso, Texas. And we lived there for a little while until he deployed. And there was a lot of abuse, physical, mental. I was T90, I was 115 pounds. And in front of people, he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, doesn't my wife look so good? She thinks she's fat." But at home, he'd be like, you can't have that. You're not really going to drink that. You're not really going to eat that. And make me feel like I was fat and I wasn't pretty and so on and so forth. Whatever. Well, I finally got my crap together. I went to school and I got my BS in biomedical science. And then I went on and applied to medical schools, and I got accepted to USAT. And the rest is history. So I'm here to tell you that keep fighting the fight. And even if you make some really dumb decisions and you get back together with somebody that is abusive, because it is incredibly, incredibly hard to leave, because for whatever reason, they've got such a mental and physical and emotional grip on us. But if we can ever just see that I would rather be broke, I would rather have nothing. And that's literally what I did. I was homeless. My kids were taken back to Texas because he came to Alabama and got them. And I had no car. We had 3 cars, but I got none. I had none. I had no job. I couldn't live with my family, which is a whole other story. But through all of that, I just kept being positive and leaning into the people that I could trust and that I did feel like cared about me. And I got a job and I went to school, all the things, all the stars, I'm telling you, all the stars will align for you the same way they did for me if you just keep going. Do not give up. Just keep putting your best foot forward. Keep trying to be safe. And of course, it does help if they're out of state. That helps tremendously. But above all else, just don't give up. Anyway, I hope you like my story. If you want to hear more, I'd be happy to share it with you. I'd be happy to give more detail. There's just so much to it. Like, I don't know, there's just not words to describe.